Hi, I'm Doyle Bishop with Tulsa Heaters Midstream. Today I want to talk to you about a topic that can be a problem. It can be a frequent problem, and it's around pilots. I like to say that when you have a fired heater, half your problems with the fired heater end up being the burner, and probably half of those are the pilot. So this little guy can be 25% of your heater problems. So it's something that you don't want to just gloss over. You don't want to 100% depend on the manufacturer to come fix this problem for you, because inevitably it's going to break on Friday night before a 3-day weekend and it's snowing. So, no one's coming to fix your pilot. So, like with most combustion pieces of equipment, like fired heaters, you have metal, you have heat. It's kind of like your barbecue pit. It doesn't last forever. Things can go wrong, and so even the best efforts of manufacturers to make something robust can sometimes prove to be just shortcomings. So let's talk about how a typical pilot works. This pilot will be fairly similar to pilots from Calidus, Zico, John Zink. This is kind of their genre of pilots. And then some other burner manufacturers may have pilots similar to that, but I know those three fairly well. So let's talk about those in general terms. So how does a pilot work? Well, it's a premix burner for starters. And you say, well, what does that mean? That means you mix the air and fuel before ignition. And the way you do that is with a Venturi. And so you see this Venturi that I've sketched out here. This little area here is effectively an open window. So I have this high velocity jet of gas coming out of this spud here. This is drilled. There's a tiny little hole right there, like a 1/16 of an inch in diameter, in that size range, and it's jetting gas out at 600 feet a second or so. And what happens is that obviously sucks in air with it. So air will come into that throat of that Venturi, mix with the fuel gas, and you get a pre-mix. If I just put a window in this pipe right here, at this location, I've got a combustible mixture. I've got the air that I need, I've got the fuel that I need. This is a combustible mixture. So that travels down this riser pipe, goes to the tip of the pilot, and this is made of like CK20, like a high grade alloy, because this is where it starts getting hot, because the flame attaches here. And in fact, a really good pilot, the flame is actually down inside of here, and maybe you get some fire coming out of these holes out of the side of the pilot. That's a good pilot. So this whole tip, if it's glowing orange, that means you got a good pilot. So they make it out of alloy so it lasts a long time. So you also have some flame that exits that windshield of the tip, and you get a nice blue flame in here, very blue, because it's pre-mixed. The air and fuel, it's great mixing. When you have great mixing, you get a blue flame. Now on the side here, you see this other bit of flame that I've drawn in here. This will be very yellow and long. Not good mixing, and for a reason. This is called a raw gas dump, or a raw gas dump tube, and what this does is this just dumps a significant amount of gas into the pilot flame, and it stretches this flame out, so I get a big flame for two reasons. One, it makes it easier to light the main burner. Two, it makes it really easy for the scanner to pick it up. Some of you guys may have sat there and tried to adjust a scanner sighting for a long time, and you just get really frustrated. Well, this raw gas dump makes it a lot easier to sight that flame and say everything's good, bring on the main gas. So let's talk about how we light a pilot. Back in the old days, they would just have like a little swivel sight port thing, and they would stick a torch in there and manually light it. Not a great, safe way of doing it. Someone said, hey, we don't really want our operators around in that process. Can we do it remotely? And the best way to do it remotely is with high voltage ignition. This is the cheapest way. There's some other ways out there that are good, that are a lot more expensive. like a high energy ignition, but bring your checkbook. Those are really expensive. This is cheaper and it's pretty reliable, but you send about 10,000 volts down this ignition wire. This one that I drew, I have it as a wire, goes to a spark plug, and then from the spark plug to the tip of the pilot, this is a rod. So it goes from wire, like insulated, high temperature insulated wire, to rod, and then here you have to have a gap. It's important that you have a gap. It's no different than the spark plug in your car. You need a gap for that electricity, those electrons to jump, and then if it jumps, then I can light it. Like I said earlier, a good pilot, there's some flame coming out. Well, that means there's a little bit of gas coming out and air, gas and air coming out. If I put a spark in that region, it's going to light the pilot. Works really, really great until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, usually it means somewhere from here back to your ignition transformer, you've got a short. Your 10,000 volts can be a little bit hard to contain. If you guys have ever worked on engines with cars, sometimes the voltage there is like 50,000 volts. So sometimes if you have just the smallest little gap in insulation, you can have a short and it won't work. So you got to be diligent to make sure that you don't have a short in this. And if you're not seeing a spark and you've got power to your transformer back over here, there's a transformer back over here, you got power to it, you're not seeing a spark, it's about a 95% chance that somewhere between here and here I've got a short. So you got to search that out and get rid of that. So how do pilots fail, or what goes wrong when they don't light? Well, we just talked about the ignition. Why that's the first thing that can happen is, hey, I'm pushing a button and I'm not getting spark. So we talked about you probably have something shorting out. And the other thing I wanted to say is I've drawn this with a wire. Some companies will take rod all the way back to here. They'll locate the spark plug here, and this is rod, so that means I'm just going to draw it in here. I've got insulators here with a bracket. These insulators crack. If you ever crack an insulator, it's guaranteed that it's going to short out and you need to change those insulators. So we talked about that. Another thing that can happen is, I mentioned this port in this spud is like a 1/16 of an inch in diameter. Well, that's pretty easy to plug. So you want to put a filter, obviously, on this. You definitely want to put a filter on your pilot gas, but it's still, you can have times where I get just a little speck in here and it plugs that spud up. Another thing that can happen is I can get accumulation of dust, maybe oily type substance comes out of your fuel, and then I start getting dust and pinch this Venturi down. Those are your basic modes of failure. A plug spud, got a short in the ignition wire, or possibly a dirty Venturi. All of these you can fix in the field if you have the spare parts, and you can fix it without calling the burner vendor.